Everybody, Ben from the Bonehead Podcast, and welcome to Wishlist Wednesday. This is our series where we get together and we have a look at a game system, a world, an army, and we figure out what's coming next, what we want to come next, and what we'll probably get next. And as we are heading into December, and therefore we're heading into 2026, we've had a big year for the old world, and it's really fun to kind of think about what might come next. So if we go over to the Games Workshop website, we're still pending a pair of really big drops, two more books. If you think about it, we've got Raising of the Westerland, which is out now or has just come out, I think. Then you've got the Cathay book that's already been featured. So this, I think, is on pre-order at the moment, so therefore is going to be dropping in a couple of weeks, which will be the last Old World release for 2025. Then, as we track it forward, we've got the big Cathay reveal from the World Championships, and we can expect that to come kind of January, end of January time. I think from the looks of it, Games Workshop have got a lot of big drops they're coming out, right? We know we've got Darkwater dropping soon, and they've got the Old World stuff up now, so it's kind of getting pretty busy, and I think we're probably about to hit the limit of Games Workshop for Christmas, and then it might go quiet until the sneaky Christmas Day preview. I think there's going to be something very exciting coming, and I don't think it's going to be fantasy related, so we'll save that for the sci-fi channel. But yeah, so we've got more chaos coming, which, let's be fair, a monstrous out of left field thing, right? No one expected us to get new Marauder models, new Marauder horseback models, or more books to do with chaos, and including stat changes for those units in that book. Now, they are playing a really interesting game with the old world. They've brought back all the models, they've brought back all the releases, they're doing little micro updates, but not only are they rejuvenating old ranges, they're also providing smaller ways to play. So in Cetra's Fury, we saw Battle March land. In Westerland, they've got the campaign, the Path to Glory rule, which I think are going to be really, really, really great. Now, something we've talked about before on this channel is the barrier to entry to getting into the old world. So having Path to Glory style expansion campaigns, basically, which is what Path to Glory does, having small 500 to 750 points Battle March games are really brilliant ways to get into this game, because you don't have to go immediately snacking up a 2,000 point army. Great thing to build, huge amount of fun, but it gives you a little bit of playtime to learn which units are good and bad, because even though the old world is a really cool game, it is not the most balanced game, and there are some units that are just strictly worse. And having done a couple of expansion campaigns in the past, particularly with Age of Sigmar, going in, brewing up a list, and then playing it and find out your units are just utterly trash can really switch you off. So having like a lower entry point level where you can try some units before you go all in, or just see how the game plays so you can learn more about it before you fully invest in a 2,000 point army, I think is a really good way to do it. So where we are at the moment, we've got Battle March for 500 to 750 points. The Raising of Westerland brings in Path to Glory, which takes you from 500 and 750 points all the way to 2,000 with like a little campaign, a little league, basically, is the best way to think about it, where some of your units, some of your heroes can gain powers or just gain extra bits of leadership, extra bits of WS and BS. It's very cool, very thematic. I really like it. Especially the bit where sometimes your units die as well. And I think they've actually done a really good job of making that expansion campaign really playable, to the point where I'm really thinking about our plans for January and for next year, and thinking, do we do this? Do we bust out a little Path to Glory for a few different armies and start showing that off on the channel? I'm really tempted. I am really very tempted. So, as it comes to it, we've got the Raising of Westerland dropping now, and then we've got the next Cathay book. And what this is doing is really rounding out the Cathayan army. I think there's still a couple of units that are floating around, so I think we can expect another wave of Cathay at some point next year. but I don't think it's going to be super needed. We've now got different ranged units, we've got different artillery, you've got the balloons. So actually, it's a pretty decently filled out army now, which is very cool. And I don't think there's actually anything in this book that makes you, well, unless you're a Cathay player, I think it's just, yeah, I think they've gone back to focusing on a specific part of the narrative in the old world, which again, I really like. So that's everything that we know is going on. Now, let's talk interesting things. And one of the interesting things is the big rumor of having a battle mammoth coming. And I don't think a war mammoth, I don't think this is likely to be the case. We've heard rumors of it. There's been rumors of it for a while. And honestly, wouldn't that just be outrageously cool? Let's have a look at the old Forge World war mammoth, because that is just an absolute wicked model. And the reason there's a rumor and speculation around this is that Games Workshop have wildly upgraded their factories, which has meant that their plastic production can now be leveled up. So there's two chunky rumors in that space. One is a Chaos War Mammoth, which I was kind of hoping we'd see in that last preview, and another is Plastic Titans for 40k, which on this channel, obviously, we don't care about. But a War Mammoth, we really do care about. So that would be a pretty sweet drop. Look, there is a Christmas Day preview coming from Games Workshop, so it's entirely possible that that will be the case, and we'll see something like that. I would be very surprised. However, let's face it, I think we were all surprised by the Chaos Marauders that dropped as well. So let's plow on and think about wishlisting for 2026. What do we think we're going to get? What would it be really cool if we got? And I think the best thing to start off with is, again, looking at these Chaos Marauders and just taking a moment to go, wow, aren't they just significantly better than the Chaos Marauders that we've got already? The old world's an interesting one. There's a lot of kits there that are older than a lot of you watching, which is remarkable. There's a lot of kits that are from before, they're genuinely early 2000s or even older than that. The Shaggoth, that came out in 6th edition, which would have been around about, oh, I don't know, 2002, something like that. That's a long time ago now. I'm not really willing to admit it, because I find that anything older than the Matrix, anything younger than the Matrix is recent to me, but that is no longer the case. But there's a lot of cool units in the old world that probably could do with a bit of an update. And the really cool thing is that we don't really know where they're going with this. So I think what's reasonable is, across the course of 2026, a couple of surprise redos of units. Before we even look at the Teams of Legend, no, the Legends armies, we've got to consider which of the units and which of the factions that we've got out now that Games Workshop have re-released that they could introduce new units to, or that they could refresh ranges of. And there are some really ugly kits kicking about. So if you think about High Elves, I mean, I'm always going to go to High Elves first because I am an old school High Elf player, and man, I do not miss the giant fisted Lego men. That's not the best set of kits in my mind. In anybody's mind, I think. Bounce over to the old world here and actually see which kits they've got. So Beastmen, yeah, there's some old models. Dwarfs, there's some old models. Empire, there's some old models, but I think Empire are doing all right. Cathay looking good. High Elves need some work. Bretonnians, actually pretty good. Orcs and Goblins, there's something charming about Orcs and Goblins that makes me think it's not really a concern. And the Wood Elves actually don't look too bad either. So I would say Beastmen maybe need a little bit of love. The Dwarves are fine. Empire's fine. High Elves need some love. And potentially Orcs and Goblins. There's a lot of stuff out there. And I think they'll focus on the armies that do well and the armies that have that charm and that charisma. Oh, wow, there's bad. There's some bad. Did they really? They really brought back the old Night Goblins. Talking about square fists. Man. Yeah, okay. Goblins need some work. Orcs and Goblins need some work. There's some lovely, charming models. Oh my god, this is actually from the 6th edition starter set. That's so cool. But I think with the kits that we're seeing, they could do better. And even though it's the brew up to the Age of Chaos in the old world, Chaos are pretty much covered. They've got good kits. I think they're going to be looking at some of the armies that are either super popular to fight with or super popular to fight against. And something like Orcs and Goblins, I think, is probably a good shout. So my wish list of what do I think is likely to be coming, not necessarily the War Mammoth, potentially a bit of a range refresh for some of the core armies like Orcs and Goblins. Now, what would I like to see coming? Well, that really comes back to the Teams of Legend, or the Armies of Legend, or whatever it's called in Old World money. What is it called? If I go to downloads and I go to Warhammer Old World, it is Legends. So, in the way of Legends, let's get rid of that. We've got Skaven, Dark Elves, Ogres, Demons, Lizardmen, Vampire Counts, and Chaos Dwarves. Now, with them having just done Chaos Dwarves for Age of Sigmar, I think Chaos Dwarves are not likely to happen. Demons, now they've kind of gone the route of saying demons are a little less abundant because Chaos is ascending. So Chaos isn't quite there. However, there are rumours that the Demons of Chaos are getting a bit of a range refresh for 40k. So we could see that split. And what we've seen from the old world, right, is that they'll do some refresh, some rejiggering in Age of Sigmar, and then a couple of years later, the old stuff can work its way back into the old world. So Lizards, where the Seraphon range in Age of Sigmar had a proper big refresh, I could see Lizardmen coming back. Vampire Counts, they've had a bit of a refresh. I can see some of that coming back. Dark Elves is an interesting one because I don't know if that's I don't know what they're trying to think or what they're doing with that, because there's not a huge amount of Dark Elves left. Like, you've got the Witch Elves because there's a whole Witch Elf army, right? And there's some Corsairs and stuff kicking around, so they may have to redo that stuff. But the Spearmen, the core of the Dark Elf force, gone now in Age of Sigmar, so they could look to bring that back. Skaven, as much as it pains me, I would love for them to bring back Skaven into the old world proper, and bring back the 6th edition stuff. But those clan rats were even worse than those goblins, so it's potentially not ideal. So if you look at the legend stuff, Chaos Dwarves I don't think we'll see. The only ones on there I think we may see in one way or another is Vampire Counts, potentially some Demons and Lizards. But the problem is the story. They're going to have to scrape the barrel. Skaven, they're not plentiful at this point. There's probably enough for some armies, so they can fit it in there. And that's kind of why they're in Legends. Vampire Counts, the same is true. Dark Elves, they're chilling at the moment, even though there's High Elves kicking around. So that makes me think that even though there's some Legends stuff there, and I wouldn't put it past them to bring an army from Legends into the old world proper, I think we're going to see new stuff from the old world. Now, the obvious one is Kislev. The obvious one is absolutely Kislev, because back when the old world was first talked about from Games Workshop, they showed design sculpts, and the army is very well realized in Total War. So I think where the old world Games Workshop is going along the lines of, we want a bit of nostalgia, but we also want to bring in the Total War crew. So I can absolutely see Kislev coming next year. And it may be that the War Mammoth is a hybrid kit for Chaos and maybe something like Kislev. It's just definitely a possibility. So for me, wish list, what we're likely to see, not the War Mammoth, but it would be very good. Range refresh for some of the other races. Orcs and Goblins and High Elves would be, I think, really well received in some ways. And then new stuff in 2026. Kislev, I can absolutely see that happening. But there is the possibility that they start to explore the story that's happening, because this is set, what, a couple of hundred years before Warhammer, the 6th edition was there. So they can do anything they want. They can create subsections of humanity. They can look at Tilia. They can look at Estalia. They can look at the different places. They can bring out custom kits. They can do whatever they want. And we've seen that with the Chaos units, which we weren't expecting. Just like, oh, Chaos are here, fine, cool. Boom. Here are some absolutely market-leading sculpts. And that, for me, is very exciting. So we've talked through what's probably not going to happen. We've talked through what's probably going to happen. What would I like to see happen? But 1.5 came out as an errata. So I don't know if 2nd edition is honestly, like, I'm in two minds of this. We could probably use a 2nd edition with a rulebook that's corrected and hot points and stuff that's kind of lined up with it. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like that kind of game. This feels like, here's the rule set, here's the errata, and now leave us alone for 4 years while we just give you models and give you supplements. What I'd love to see is them to continue the story with these arcane journals. just continue to introduce new bits. And the ones that I think have landed really well are the ones with mission packs or tournaments or small play format stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff they could do there, so I'd love to see them continue, and I'd love to see them bring in more campaign rules, or maybe even some skirmish rules, which would be really interesting. Because if you think about what Games Workshop have got, moreover, what they don't have, they've got nothing in the way of fantasy skirmish, really. There's Warcry, but that's about it. So we've got some great models, we've got some not great models, but you've got a great universe to play with. So actually taking it into a place of them bringing in a skirmish expansion with maybe some cool new hero models or a new unit for a race or two is a cunning way to kind of serve the old world market while also taking a little peek, taking a little poke at the Mordheim players of old, because I think there's a little untapped market there as well. But the last thing for me on my little wish list for the old world for 2026, we've seen Warhammer Quest Dark Water, and it is gorgeous. It is a fantastic product. The looks of it makes you think of the old world, but it's not. It's Age of Sigmar. But what if they took this opportunity to drop a real old world dungeon crawler game, a real kind of rejigging of Warhammer Quest 95, and dropped it in the setting that the old world is currently at, which is that hundreds of years before period? Wouldn't that be something very cool? Some heroes that you could use for the old world, and it could be a really good way of rejigging some of the villain models that we need, like orcs and goblins and stuff like that. A dungeon crawler with some heroes from the old world armies against some skeletons to feed into your vampire counts, maybe against some orcs and goblins to feed into the orcs and goblins. Get them a mini range refresh with some great models, build up some hype, build up that narrative, and continue just fleshing out this old world meta that they've got at the moment. So I'm loving it. It's really cool, and I cannot wait to see what's coming in 2026. But yeah, anything and everything I think is really good fun for the old world, because it's lovely to see it back. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll be back soon with more gaming content. Happy wargaming.